Katie Roberts, at just 22 years old, was a warm and constant presence in the hospital corridors. Her energy and empathy made every patient feel welcomed. "How are you feeling today?" she would ask with a genuine smile as she adjusted a patient's pillow. It was her way of showing she cared. Among so many patients, one in particular caught her attention. William Thompson, an elderly and reserved man who often preferred silence over conversation. Katie noticed that even surrounded by doctors and assistants, he seemed profoundly lonely. "Is there anything else I can do for you, Mr. Thompson?" Katie asked one morning as she checked his vitals. William looked up, surprised by her kindness. "You're already doing more than enough, my dear." There was a deep sadness in his voice, something Katie couldn't ignore. "It seems like you're carrying a heavy burden. Do you want to talk about it?" She sat down beside him, showing patience. Mr. Thompson hesitated for a moment, but soon gave in to the sincerity in Katie's eyes. "I've lost touch with my family. A long time ago, and now I'm here, surrounded by people, but completely alone." He looked up at the ceiling, as if searching for words he couldn't find. "What's the point of having so much money if no one really cares about you?" Katie felt a pang in her heart. Although she had never been in a similar situation, she understood what it felt like to be lonely. "I know it's not the same, but I don't have anyone anymore either. My parents passed away recently. I think we're closer than you might imagine." William was silent for a few moments, processing what she said. Then a slight smile appeared on his face. "Life is funny that way, isn't it? It puts strangers in our path to remind us that we can still find a little light, even in the darkest times." From that day on, Katie and William began talking daily. Between medical care and shared laughter, the young nurse and the elderly millionaire started building something stronger than just a patient-caregiver relationship. And it was in that environment of trust and empathy that something special began to blossom. As the days went by, Katie and William grew closer. Their conversations went beyond medical care. They shared personal stories, pains, and dreams. It was as if both had found an unexpected connection that filled the voids they carried. "Have you always wanted to be a nurse?" William asked one afternoon as he watched Katie organize the medications on his table. "Yes, ever since I was little. My mother used to say I had a gift for taking care of people." "I guess she was right," Katie replied with a nostalgic smile. "And you? Did you always want to be a big businessman?" William let out a light laugh. "It was never really a dream, but my family expected it of me. I ended up following the path they chose." Katie noticed a bitter tone in William's voice. "And your family? Do they visit you?" she asked, trying to hide her concern. William looked away, gazing out the window where the sun shone brightly outside in contrast to the cold hospital room. "My wife and stepson are too busy with their own interests. I can't blame them. I was never a present father for Matthew, and, well, Diane has always been more interested in my bank account than in me." There was a palpable pain in his words. Katie placed her hand on his, a gesture of comfort. "Sometimes life gives us the chance to change things. It's never too late to start over." William smiled, his eyes teary. "You're young, Katie. You still have time to start over as many times as you want. Me, I'm at the end of the line. What's left now is just to try and put everything in order." Katie squeezed his hand tighter. "As long as we're alive, there's always a chance to do things differently. And if you need someone to listen, I'll be here." It was at that moment William realized that for the first time in years, he had someone he could truly trust. Katie wasn't there because of his money or status, but because she genuinely cared about him as a person. And for someone who had been surrounded by falsehood for so long, that meant more than any fortune he owned. "Thank you for being so kind to me, Katie," William said, his voice heavy with emotion. "You've brought a little light to this stubborn old man." Katie smiled, unaware of how that simple act of kindness would change their lives forever. It was a quiet afternoon at the hospital when William asked to speak with Katie in private. His usually calm expression was clouded with a concern she hadn't seen before. "Katie, I need to ask you a favor," he began as he adjusted himself on the bed, his voice low and hesitant. "Of course, Mr. Thompson." "Whatever you need," Katie replied, trying to ease the evident tension in the air. He took a deep breath before continuing. "I have a complicated surgery ahead, and there's something I need to settle first." He paused as if searching for the right words. "I have a very important business event coming up in a few days. I don't trust anyone in my family to represent me." Would you come with me, pretend to be my daughter? Katie was surprised and a bit confused. Your daughter? She frowned, unsure if she'd heard correctly. But Mr. Thompson, I'm just your nurse. I have nothing to do with these matters. William gave a sad smile. I know, my dear, but you're the only person I trust right now. My family, they only care about money, about what they can get. I need someone by my side who genuinely cares about me, not what I own. Katie felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, she was honored by his trust, but on the other, she was worried about what this could mean. But what if they find out I'm not your daughter? What if I end up ruining everything? William took her hand, his gaze steady and sincere. Don't worry about that. I just need someone trustworthy by my side, someone who makes me feel safe, even if it's just for one night. And you do that, Katie. The request seemed simple, but it carried an enormous emotional weight. Katie knew that for William, this event represented more than just business. It was a final act of control over his life before the surgery, an attempt to ensure that, no matter what happened, his wishes would be respected. After a few moments of silence, Katie took a deep breath and gave a small smile. If it's that important to you, Mr. Thompson, I'll go, but only if you promise to focus on your recovery afterward. William laughed, relieved. Deal? It's a promise. He shook her hand as if sealing a pact. Thank you, Katie. You have no idea how much this means to me. The young nurse left the room with her heart racing, aware that she was about to get involved in something much bigger than she could have imagined. Despite the uncertainties, she decided to trust William and the bond they had built. After all, when two people genuinely care for each other, great changes can happen, even in difficult times. As Katie got ready for the event alongside William, the atmosphere at the Thompson mansion was tense and filled with ulterior motives. Diane, William's wife, paced back and forth in the luxurious office, her heels echoing across the marble floor. She was visibly irritated, her eyes flashing with frustration. I can't believe that old man is bringing that little nurse to the event, she fumed, slamming her purse down on the desk. Who does she think she is? I should be by his side, as I've always been, but he prefers a stranger. Matthew, her son, was sitting on the sofa, flipping through a business magazine with no real interest. Calm down, Mom. This just shows that the old man is losing his mind. And if this keeps up, we can claim mental incompetence and take control of everything. Diane turned to him, her eyes narrowed. But we need to act fast. That nurse is gaining his trust. Did you see how he treats her? Like she's his daughter. Matthew snapped the magazine shut and stood up. Then we'll do what needs to be done. If this Katie girl is starting to feel like part of the family, let's show her how things really are around here. Diane crossed her arms, trying to mask her anxiety. What do you suggest? He gave a cold smile. We'll discredit her, tarnish her image in the old man's eyes. If she looks like an opportunist, or better yet, a criminal, William will push her away for good. We can use the hospital's cameras, manipulate them, make it look like she stole something. Diane raised an eyebrow, already intrigued. Do you really think that would work? What if she doesn't fall for it? Matthew laughed. She's a nurse, Mom, a young and naive girl. We'll make her nervous, pressure her, until she makes a mistake. Diane nodded slowly, her expression softening with a sinister glint in her eyes. Very well, Matthew. Let's put this plan into action. Tomorrow I'll leave my purse at the hospital. Something expensive, a designer brand, and when they find it among her things, William will have no choice but to distance himself from that girl. Matthew stepped closer, his voice dripping with malice. Perfect. This will work. And while they're dealing with that scandal, we'll keep pressing William about the will. We need to make sure everything is in our favor. Diane smiled, satisfied. Finally, we're in control. That nurse is going to learn the hard way that you don't step into our family without facing the consequences. With the plan set, mother and son began discussing the details, confident that soon they would have a clear path to inherit William's fortune. Meanwhile, Katie, unaware of everything, was getting ready for the event, believing she was just helping a friend. Little did she know that she was about to step into a minefield, where any wrong move could destroy her reputation and the trust she had built with William. The day of the trap arrived, and everything seemed normal at the hospital. Katie, as usual, was busy attending to patients and organizing medications when Diane walked into the building with an air of superiority. She was wearing a designer dress and carrying an extravagant purse that caught everyone's attention. Pretending to be distracted, Diane left the purse on a table in the hallway near the nursing station where Katie worked. "Excuse me, nurse," Diane said, catching Katie's attention with a fake smile. "I just came to drop off some documents for William. Could you give them to him when you have a moment?" She made a point to be polite, as if she were just another concerned wife with a sick husband. Katie, not suspecting the intentions behind the gesture, responded with her usual cordiality. "Of course, Mrs. Thompson. I'll deliver them as soon as possible. Thank you for bringing them." Diane nodded and left the hospital, intentionally leaving her purse behind. She knew the plan was in motion and that Matthew would soon take the next step. Hidden in the parking lot, he watched his mother leave and then entered the hospital. Matthew, moving stealthily, passed by the nursing station while Katie was busy with a patient and discreetly placed Diane's purse in the personal locker of the nurse. The action was quick and no one seemed to notice. He left the hospital with the satisfaction of someone who knew he had set up the perfect trap. A few hours later, Diane returned to the hospital, this time agitated and dramatic. "Where is my purse?" she shouted for everyone to hear, attracting attention from all around. "I left it here a few hours ago, and now it's gone. Someone must have stolen it." Katie, hearing the commotion, approached, trying to calm the situation. "Mrs. Thompson, please, let's try to resolve this calmly. I'm sure your purse is around here somewhere." Diane, however, wasn't willing to listen. "Calm? You want me to be calm when my purse disappears inside a hospital? It's a valuable item, and you're in charge of this floor, aren't you?" Katie, still not understanding what was happening, tried to keep her composure. "Yes, I'm in charge, but I'm sure it's nothing serious. We can look for it together." At that moment, Matthew appeared, pretending to be surprised. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking around with a concerned expression. "My purse was stolen," Diane exclaimed, her voice almost desperate. "And I want someone to do something about it now." Matthew looked directly at Katie, as if he had just had an idea. "Maybe we should check the staff lockers. Who knows? Someone might have accidentally put it away." Katie hesitated. "Sir, that's unnecessary. Everyone here is trustworthy, and I haven't seen anyone touch anything." But Diane, seizing the opportunity, shouted, "Then you must know where it is, right?" The situation grew tense, and to avoid further confusion, Katie gave in. "All right, let's check." She opened her locker, and to her shock and disbelief, there was Diane's purse, right in the middle of her belongings. "This is impossible," Katie said, feeling panic rising inside her. "I swear I didn't put this here." Diane, pretending to be offended and incredulous, crossed her arms. "Then how do you explain this? My purse, among your things. Do you really think you can steal something and get away with it?" Matthew chimed in with a tone of false concern. "This is very serious, Katie. I think we should call security and handle this the proper way." Katie felt tears welling up, but she took a deep breath and tried to defend herself. "I would never do this. If something needs to be clarified, I want the hospital cameras to be checked. This is all a misunderstanding." Security was called, and after hours of tension, the security camera footage was reviewed. To Katie's relief and Diane and Matthew's frustration, the video clearly showed Matthew placing the purse in Katie's locker without her noticing. "So this is how you play?" William, who had been informed of the situation and was now watching the video with anger in his eyes, said, "Trying to incriminate the only person who supports me?" Diane tried to argue, but William raised his hand, silencing her. "Enough, Diane. I'm done with all of this." Matthew, nervous, tried to defend himself. "It was a mistake, a misunderstanding. You have no place here anymore," William interrupted, his voice firm and decisive. "From now on, I don't want to hear any more about conspiracies or lies. If you can't respect those who care about me, then there's no more room for you in my life." With that, Diane and Matthew left the hospital under disapproving stares. Katie, still shaken, was hugged by William. "I'm so sorry you had to go through this, Katie. I should never have let it get to this point." Katie just nodded, trying to hold back tears. "I'm here to help, Mr. Thompson, and I'll keep doing that, no matter what happens." With renewed support from William, Katie realized that despite the challenges, she was more determined than ever to stay by his side, no matter what else came their way. After the incident at the hospital, William knew he couldn't waste any more time. The surgery to remove the brain tumor was scheduled for the next day, and despite trying to stay calm, the worry was evident in his eyes. He knew the risks, and especially what could happen if he didn't survive the procedure. That night, while Katie was on her last shift before the surgery, William asked to talk to her. She entered his room and noticed that despite his calm demeanor, there was a palpable tension in the air. "Katie, please, have a seat," William said, pointing to the chair beside his bed. "There's something I need to tell you before all of this." She came closer, concerned, and took his hand. "What is it, Mr. Thompson? Are you feeling unwell?" He shook his head. "No, dear. Actually, it's quite the opposite. You've made me feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Peace. But I need to make sure that, no matter what happens tomorrow, you'll be okay." Katie frowned, confused. "What do you mean by that?" William took a deep breath. "I've changed my will, Katie. If something goes wrong during the surgery, I want you to know that I've left everything to you. My fortune, my house, everything." The shock was evident on her face. "But Mr. Thompson, that's not necessary. I just want you to be well. I don't do what I do for money. I do it because I care about you." He smiled tenderly. "I know that. That's exactly why I'm doing this. You're the only person who has been by my side out of love and respect, not out of interest. I want to make sure that, if I'm not here, you have the future you deserve." Katie shook her head, feeling the tears welling up. "This is too much, Mr. Thompson. I can't accept it." William squeezed her hand, his voice firm and determined. "Yes, you can, and you should consider it a gift from a stubborn old man who found in his final days someone he could truly trust. You changed my life, Katie. If I don't make it, I want you to know that you made my last days worthwhile." Katie was silent, tears streaming down her face. I promise that, no matter what happens, I'll honor everything you've done for me. But I believe you're going to make it through this. I'll be waiting for you at the door of the surgical unit." William smiled, trying to lighten the moment. "Deal? And I'll do my best not to let you down." The next morning, the atmosphere in the hospital was tense. Katie joined the medical team to accompany William to the operating room. Lying on the stretcher, he held her hand tightly. "You're the daughter I never had, Katie. Don't forget that." "I won't forget, Mr. Thompson. I'll be here waiting for you." With those words, William was taken into surgery. The procedure was long and delicate, and Katie spent every minute in the waiting room, her heart heavy and her mind praying for everything to go well. Hours later, the surgeon entered the waiting room, still dressed in his surgical scrubs. Katie jumped to her feet, her heart racing. "How is he? Did everything go well?" The doctor smiled, exhausted but relieved. The surgery was a success. The tumor was removed, and although the next few days will be critical, he's responding well. Katie felt her legs give way in relief and almost fell to her knees. "Thank God," she murmured, tears once again filling her eyes. She waited patiently until William was moved to the ICU. When she was finally able to see him, still asleep and surrounded by machines, she approached and took his hand, as he had done so many times with her. "You did it, Mr. Thompson," she whispered with a soft smile. "Now just rest and recover. I'll be here, always." From that moment on, Katie decided that she would do everything in her power to help William recover. And although she was still shaken by his decision to leave her as his heir, she knew that now her responsibility was even greater. It wasn't just a matter of fulfilling a wish, but of standing by someone who had become more than just a patient to her, a true father. The days following the surgery were tense, but William, with Katie's help, was recovering surprisingly well. He was already able to talk and eat without much difficulty, and although there was still a long way to go, the prospect of a full recovery seemed closer each day. One afternoon, while resting in his hospital room, William called Katie over for a serious conversation. "Katie, I have something important to tell you," he said, his voice still a bit weak but resolute. Katie, who was adjusting the pillows to make him more comfortable, stopped what she was doing and sat down beside him. "What's wrong, Mr. Thompson? Is something bothering you?" William took a deep breath. "Before I went in for surgery, I hired a private detective, Zach. I wanted to better understand what was happening around me, especially with Diane and Matthew. And, well, what he found wasn't easy to hear." Katie frowned, feeling a chill run down her spine. "What did he find out?" William picked up the phone from the table beside him and showed Katie some photos and documents Zach had sent. Diane and Matthew were plotting to kill me. They wanted to speed things up, probably to get their hands on my fortune before I had the chance to change the will. Katie covered her mouth in shock. "That's horrible, Mr. Thompson. And What are you planning to do now? William looked directly at her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of pain and determination. I can't let them get away with what they've done. I'm cutting ties with them for good. I've already asked my lawyer to start the divorce process and remove Matthew from my will. But more importantly, I need to make sure you stay safe. Katie shook her head, still processing the information. I can't believe they would do something like this. How can anyone be so cruel? Money, dear. Money makes people show the worst of themselves. William sighed, seeming to age years in just a few seconds. I always knew Diane was with me for the money, but I never thought she'd go this far. He looked down at his hands, as if searching for strength within himself. The only good thing that's come out of this whole situation is you, Katie. You've shown me that there are still people who genuinely care. Katie placed her hand over his. I'm here, Mr. Thompson, and I'll stay by your side no matter what happens. Before William could respond, Zach, the detective, entered the room. He was a middle-aged man with a firm posture and a keen gaze. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Thompson, but I have new information. William motioned for him to continue. Go ahead, Zach. Katie can hear everything. Zach nodded and began to explain. I found evidence that Diane and Matthew hired an intermediary to try and tamper with the medication you were taking before surgery. The plan was to make it look like you had a natural complication without raising suspicion. Katie was horrified. That's monstrous, Zach agreed. Yes, but luckily we were able to stop it in time. Now, with this evidence, we can take legal action. The police have already been notified, and Diane and Matthew will be questioned soon. William nodded, his gaze steady. I want them to be held accountable for everything. I won't let them get away with this. Zach looked at Katie, noticing how emotionally involved she was. And what about you, Katie? Are you ready to face whatever comes? She took a deep breath, looking at William with determination. Yes, I am. No matter how hard it gets, I'll stay by Mr. Thompson's side. He deserves justice. William smiled, despite the seriousness of the situation. You're amazing, Katie. I knew I could count on you. With the decision made, William prepared to confront Diane and Matthew once and for all. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but with Katie by his side, he felt strong enough to handle anything. He had spent his whole life surrounded by people who only cared about his money, but now he had someone who truly cared about him, and that made all the difference. After the shocking revelations about Diane and Matthew's intentions, William decided to act swiftly. Still in the hospital, he called his lawyer and began organizing the documents for the divorce and removing Matthew from his will. He knew he needed to distance himself from those people before they tried something even worse. A few days later, now more recovered, William asked Diane and Matthew to come to the hospital. He wanted to confront both of them and make it clear that their charade was over. Katie stood by his side, offering her unwavering support. When Diane and Matthew entered the room, both with expressions of fake concern, William stared at them with a look that combined disappointment and determination. William, darling, we're so glad you're okay, Diane exclaimed, pretending to be emotional. We were so worried about you. William kept calm despite feeling the rage boiling inside him. Cut the act, Diane. I know everything. Diane's face turned pale, but she tried to maintain her composure. What are you talking about? William pointed to Zach, who was standing by the door observing everything. I hired a private investigator. I know about your plan to kill me by tampering with my medication. All the evidence is right here, and the police are already on their way. Matthew stepped forward, trying to take control of the situation. This is absurd. Someone must have given you the wrong information, William. We would never do that to you. Zach, with a wry smile, pulled some photos and documents out of his pocket. These are the proofs that say otherwise, Mr. Matthew. Call logs, money transfers to the middleman you hired, and even recorded conversations. I'm sure the police will be very interested. Seeing no way out, Diane's demeanor changed. So that's it? After everything we've been through together, you're going to believe a nurse and a detective over your own family? William looked at her, his gaze cold and resolute. Family? You were never my family. I was blind, but now I see clearly. I always knew our marriage was one of convenience, but I never thought you would try to kill me for money. That's unforgivable. Matthew, now desperate, tried to appeal. Please, William, we can work this out. We're willing to do anything. Just don't call the police. Think about everything we've been through. William shook his head. There's nothing left to think about. I've already spoken to my lawyer. The divorce is in process and you, Matthew, are out of the will. You won't take anything else from me. Diane snapped, her mask finally falling. You can't do this. I deserve that fortune more than anyone. I've stood by your side for years, putting up with everything. William interrupted her, his voice firm. Putting up with what, Diane? I'm not the one accused of conspiracy and attempted murder. You two are monsters, and I want you out of my life forever. At that moment, the police arrived at the room. William Thompson, one of the officers asked. We're here to arrest Diane Thompson and Matthew Sullivan as requested. Diane started screaming, trying to break free from the officers. This is a mistake. He's gone mad. You'll pay for this, William. But William remained unfazed. He just watched as the two were handcuffed and taken away. Matthew still tried to look back, as if hoping for some leniency, but William turned away, severing any ties with him for good. With their departure, a heavy silence filled the room. William took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. I should have seen it earlier. I was blind for so long. Katie stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. The important thing is that you're free from it now, Mr. Thompson. You can start over, surrounded by people who truly care about you. He smiled, grateful. And that includes you, Katie. You've been the light at the end of my dark tunnel. I don't know what I would have done without you. Katie shook her head, touched. I just did what any decent person would do. You deserve to be happy, and now you have the chance to start over. William nodded, feeling a huge weight lifting off his shoulders. Yes, I think I do. And this time, I'm going to do things right. In that moment, William felt that despite everything he had been through, a new chapter was beginning. With Diane and Matthew out of his life, he could finally live in peace, surrounded by those who truly loved him. And as he looked at Katie, he knew that, despite it all, he had found a new meaning for the word family. With Diane and Matthew out of his life, William felt like he could finally breathe in peace. The tension he had carried for years had dissipated, and now he was fully dedicated to his recovery and to nurturing the bond he had built with Katie. The days in the hospital became lighter, filled with genuine conversations and moments of laughter that he had never imagined experiencing. One afternoon, after a physical therapy session, William asked to speak to Katie in private. He was sitting in the chair by the window, watching the activity outside, when she entered the room with a gentle smile. You wanted to speak with me? Katie asked, pulling up a chair and sitting beside him. William nodded, his gaze reflecting a mix of apprehension and hope. Yes, Katie, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened in the past few months, about how you came into my life at a time when I had lost faith in everything. Katie tilted her head, curious. Mr. Thompson, what do you mean by that? He sighed, choosing his words carefully. I never thought I'd have another chance to experience something like family love. My own family betrayed me, and I was completely lost. But you brought something into my life that I didn't even know I needed. Katie smiled, touched. You've always been like a father to me since we met. I lost my parents so early, and finding someone like you was a blessing. William held her hand, squeezing it gently. I feel the same way, Katie, and that's why I want to ask you something very important. He paused as if trying to muster the courage to continue. I would like to adopt you as my daughter, officially. I know it's not a common thing, but you are the closest thing I've ever had to a true family. Katie was silent for a moment, absorbing what she had just heard. Tears welled up in her eyes as she processed the unexpected request. Mr. Thompson, I don't know what to say. This means so much to me, but I don't want you to feel like you have to do this out of obligation. William shook his head, the gentle smile never leaving his face. It's not an obligation, Katie. It's a desire to correct the mistakes of the past and start a new life with someone who truly matters to me. I want to give you the family you lost and at the same time, find the family I never had. Katie tried to hold back the tears, but she couldn't. I would love to be your daughter. You've been a father to me since the first day we met, and I will do everything to honor that role, just the way my parents would have wanted me to. William was moved, and they both sat in silence for a moment, simply appreciating the special bond they had built. So it's settled. We'll start the adoption process, and from now on, you will no longer be just Katie Roberts. You'll be Katie Thompson, my daughter. Katie laughed, wiping away her tears. Katie Thompson, it has a nice ring to it. In the days that followed, they began organizing the paperwork for the adoption. William, despite his frail condition, was determined to make this dream a reality. The process was quick, thanks to his influence and resources. But what truly mattered was what that gesture symbolized. A new beginning, a new family. During a meeting with his lawyer, William made sure to clarify his wishes for Katie's future. "I want everything in her name. My house, my shares, my assets. I want her to be protected no matter what happens." The lawyer nodded, taking notes. "Understood, Mr. Thompson. We'll take care of everything as you wish." When everything was finalized, William looked at Katie, his eyes filled with pride. "It's official now. You are my daughter, and nothing and no one can change that." Katie leaned in and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you for everything." William returned the embrace, feeling more complete than ever before. "I should be the one thanking you, my dear. You've given me a new chance to live, to love, and I will never forget that." From that moment on, they began to see each other not just as patient and nurse, but as father and daughter. Their days were filled with discussions about the future, plans for trips, and even decorating the house they would live in together. They knew the road ahead would still be long and full of challenges, but now, with the bond officially and firmly established between them, they were ready to face anything. Katie, now known as Katie Thompson, realized she had found something she never expected: a family, love, and a home. And William, in turn, felt that despite all the mistakes of the past, he had found redemption in the arms of the young woman he had the privilege to call his daughter. The months following the adoption process brought a new phase of happiness for William and Katie. Now officially father and daughter, they began planning their life together outside the hospital walls. William's recovery was progressing well, and finally, the day to go home had arrived. Katie was packing William's belongings, helping him get ready to leave the hospital. He, sitting in a chair, watched her with a fond smile. "I never thought I'd be so happy to leave a hospital," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. Katie smiled, carefully closing the suitcase. "After everything we've been through here, it's such a relief to leave. And now we're starting a new life. Have you thought about what our routine will be like?" William put on a thoughtful expression. "Well, I was thinking of learning how to cook. I don't want you to have to do everything on your own." Katie laughed, shaking her head. "I'm sure you don't want me to cook either. If it's up to me, we'll be living off cereal and burnt toast." "Then we're in trouble," William joked, laughing. "But you know what? I don't care. What matters is that we're together." As they left the hospital, they were greeted by a clear blue sky and pleasant weather. Zach, the detective, and now a close friend, was waiting for them outside, leaning against an elegant car. "Ready for the big change, Thompson family?" he asked with a smile. Katie nodded, still getting used to the new last name. "More than ever. Thank you for everything, Zach. You were instrumental in making all of this possible." "I was just doing my job, Katie, but I'm happy to see you two finally free from this storm," he said, opening the car door for William to get in. During the drive to their new home, William and Katie talked about what their new routine would be like. William, always concerned, asked about Katie's studies and her dreams for the future. "Now that everything is settling down, have you thought about going back to college? I know nursing is important to you, but I want you to follow your dreams." Katie looked at him with affection. "I have thought about it. I want to take a course in business administration, maybe even hospital management. I want to help other people like I helped you, but in a broader way." William nodded, proud. "I'll support you in whatever you decide. I want to see you achieve everything you've ever dreamed of." When they arrived at the new house, a beautiful residence surrounded by a blooming garden, Katie was amazed. "This is beautiful. I don't even know where to start exploring." William smiled, watching the look of wonder on her face. "Consider this our new beginning. Every corner of this house will be filled with good memories. We're going to turn this place into our home." As Zach helped them unload the bags, William approached Katie with a small box in his hands. "I wanted to wait for a special moment, but I think this is the right one." Katie frowned, curious. "What is it?" William opened the box, revealing a golden key with a pendant. "This is the key to our home. But more than that, it's a symbol of everything you've done for me. You brought light to my darkest days and gave me a reason to keep going. I want you to know that this place is just as much yours as it is mine." Katie took the key, emotional. "Thank you, Dad. I promise I'll take care of everything, just like you always took care of me." He hugged her, feeling a peace he hadn't felt in years. "We're going to build something beautiful here, my daughter." The following days were filled with adjustments and lots of laughter. Katie and William decorated the house together, painting walls, choosing furniture, and even planting a garden. Every detail had a touch of both of them, creating a space that truly felt like home. They started sharing small responsibilities and routines, like watching movies at night and preparing simple meals, laughing at William's disastrous attempts in the kitchen. One evening, as they watched a movie on the couch, William looked at Katie with a serious but calm expression. "You know, I thought my life would end without me being able to right my wrongs, but you gave me a second chance. I just want you to know that, for me, there's no greater happiness than being here, with you." Katie held his hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. "And I just want you to know that I've never been so happy. I feel at home finally. You've given me more than I could ever dream of." William smiled and pulled Katie into a hug. "We're a family now, and no matter what happens, we'll be together." And so the Thompson house, which once seemed like just a big empty building, became a real home. There, William and Katie discovered that even after so many losses and betrayals, it was still possible to find love, hope, and a new beginning. With their lives finally stabilized and all the turmoil of the past left behind, William and Katie embarked on a new chapter as a true family. The house that once felt large and empty, soon filled with laughter, heartfelt conversations, and small moments they came to cherish. Every corner of their new home reflected the bond they had built and the love that united them. In the first few weeks, Katie and William began establishing routines together. Every morning, they gathered in the kitchen for breakfast, sharing plans for the day. Katie would talk about her classes at college and her dreams for the future, while William shared his ideas for charitable projects he planned to support. One morning, as William clumsily tried to make coffee, spilling half the grounds on the counter, Katie laughed at his struggle with the coffee maker. "Need some help there, Dad?" William looked at her with an amused smile. "I swear, one day I'll manage to make a decent cup of coffee. Until then, I guess we'll just have to survive my attempts." Katie laughed, taking his cup and filling it with freshly brewed coffee. "Here, this is my way of saving the mornings. And don't worry, you have other amazing talents." William sighed, accepting the cup. "Ah, you're a wonderful daughter. You have no idea how good it feels to have someone to save me from my own clumsiness." After breakfast, they usually took a stroll around the garden, where they had planted various species of flowers and shrubs together. Gardening became therapeutic for both of them, a way to leave the past behind and cultivate a brighter future. William, who had never planted a flower in his life, now found himself curious about every detail, from soil types to the amount of light each plant needed. "These roses are growing well, don't you think?" he asked, looking at a flower bed Katie had planted. "Yes, they're beautiful. You know, when I was little, my mom always said that roses need a lot of care, but when they bloom, all the effort is worth it. I think that applies to many things in life, don't you?" William nodded, thoughtful. "It's true, and you've been the best gardener I could ever have by my side, Katie." Days passed, and soon Katie started attending university, excited about her healthcare management course. She approached her studies with the same determination she had used to care for William, and he in turn supported her every step of the way. Whenever she had a difficult assignment or an important test, he was always there, ready to listen or help in any way he could. "Dad, I think I'm going crazy with this research project," Katie exclaimed one night, spreading books and notes across the dining table. William approached, looking at the material with a curious expression. "What's it about?" "It's about crisis management in hospitals during emergencies. There are so many variables to consider. It's hard to organize everything." William smiled, proud. "I might not know much about hospitals, but I know you're great at solving problems. If you organize this the same way you organize my life, you'll ace it." Katie laughed, touched by his encouragement. "Thank you, Dad. I needed to hear that." While Katie focused on her studies, William immersed himself in his philanthropic projects. He began investing time and resources in health institutions and initiatives that helped low-income families. Inspired by Katie's journey, he wanted to do something that would truly impact people's lives. He decided to build a pediatric wing at a local hospital, a place where children and their families could receive quality care at no cost. "Do you think I'm crazy for wanting to do something this big?" he asked Katie one evening as they discussed the project in their home office. Katie looked at him with pride. "Dad, you're doing something incredible. This will change the lives of so many children and their families. If anyone can make this happen, it's you." Preparations for the construction of the pediatric wing took months of planning, meetings, and dedication. William and Katie visited the hospital several times, discussing with architects and doctors what would be needed to create a welcoming and efficient space. With every decision, William involved Katie, valuing her opinion and ideas. During one of these visits, as they discussed the colors and decor for the space, Katie suggested something special. "How about having a reading area with lots of books and comfy chairs? When I was a kid, books were my refuge. I think the children here would love a place like that too." William smiled, moved by her suggestion. "Great idea. Let's do it. I want every detail of this place to have a bit of your touch." Finally, the grand opening day arrived. The hospital was decorated with colorful balloons and celebratory banners, and the new pediatric wing was ready to be unveiled to the public. Katie and William arrived early, both nervous and excited. The local media were present, and several special guests, including doctors, nurses, and patients, were eager to see the outcome of the project. William stepped up to the stage to give a speech, his heart full of pride and emotion. "Good evening, everyone. This project represents much more than just a building. It's a symbol of hope and a new beginning, not only for the children who will be treated here, but also for me. After everything I've been through, this pediatric wing is my way of giving back for what life has given me. A second chance." He paused, looking at Katie, who was in the front row, her eyes shining with tears. "And of course, none of this would have been possible without the support of my daughter, Katie. She is the inspiration behind it all. Her strength, kindness, and determination showed me that it's always possible to start over. Katie, this project is as much yours as it is mine." Katie couldn't hold back her tears. She climbed onto the stage and hugged William tightly, to the emotional applause of the audience. "Thank you, Dad. I couldn't dream of a better father." After the speech, they cut the red ribbon symbolizing the official opening of the pediatric wing. The children began exploring the space, their laughter filling the newly painted halls with vibrant colors. Katie and William walked around together, observing the positive effect that the welcoming environment had on the young patients and their families. At the end of the day, after all the guests had left and the hospital returned to its normal rhythm, Katie and William spent a quiet moment alone in the new reading area, looking at the shelves full of books and the cozy chairs they had chosen with such care. "We did it, Dad," Katie said, breaking the silence. "This is more than I could have imagined." William smiled, holding her hand. "Yes, we did. And this is just the beginning. There are many more things we can do together." Katie nodded, feeling the weight of emotion in every word. "No matter what comes next, I know we'll face everything together, because now we're a true family." William hugged her, feeling a genuine happiness he never thought he'd experience again. "Yes, my dear, we are a family, and as long as we're together, nothing can stop us." And so Katie and William moved forward, building a life full of meaning, love, and purpose. They knew the road would be long and there would still be challenges, but they also knew that with each other's support, they could overcome any obstacle. Together they found not only a new beginning, but also the true essence of what it means to be a family. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more stories like this one, we have prepared the next video just for you. Click here to watch.